start at the lowest mag and move to the highest magnification in this figure. So it's over here is a model of what your rib cage looks like. We're looking pretty much from the back, so this is along the back surface. Here's the spinal cord in here. And here in green, they're not really green, but they've been labeled green here, are things that are called dorsal root ganglia. Dorsal root ganglia. A ganglion, plural ganglia, is a collection of cell bodies. Most of the time we use it for a collection of neuronal cell bodies outside the central nervous system. And here's where we are. We're outside the central nervous system. Spinal cord's in here. The dorsal roots are these axons that are going from the ganglia into the spinal cord. So we can follow one right here. Right? So the ganglia have about 10,000 cell bodies of somatosensory receptor neurons. All of them. They're called dorsal root ganglion cells, duh. And here's one of them over here. Right? So it's a picture. Here's the ganglion cell here. There'd be 9,999 others of them sitting side by side. And we will look at the anatomy of this in a bit, but you should appreciate what's happening. This transduction of the somatosensory stimulus is happening out here in the skin or the muscles, tendons, viscera. So that's where transduction's taking place. That's where the stimulus is. And then conduction of the action potential along the axon on into the central nervous system. You'll notice it's a myelinated axon. The myelin is in green when it's out here in the periphery, so PNS myelin there. And this artist has turned it into pink when it makes it into the CNS. You'll recall that's because different cells make myelin in the CNS and PNS. In the CNS, it is a kind of cell called an oligo, meaning few, dendro, meaning process, dendrocyte. Whereas in the peripheral nervous system, it's a kind of cell that we call a Schwann cell. All right, so fine. We've got a somatosensory receptor neuron called a dorsal root ganglion cell. It sits along with 9,999 of its neighbors right here in each of these ganglia. That's true. And these guys have an unusual anatomy that I'll get to in another video. Now you should appreciate you've got 32 dorsal root ganglia on each side, so two sides to you. You're bilaterally symmetric. You got 64 of them. You also have two in your brain, just outside your brainstem, called the trigeminal ganglia plus 2. They handle somatic sensation for the face. So you've got 66 ganglia, each with about 10,000 cell bodies. So what do you got? You got about 660,000 somatosensory receptor neurons, 660,000 of them. You might think that's a lot. No, you've got twice that number of neurons that go from your retina to your brain. So really, we're asking a lot from relatively few neurons, less than 1 million somatosensory neurons. So that's pretty impressive. We're asking a lot from them. All right, so that's the idea. Somatosensory receptor neurons are in ganglia. The ganglia are tucked here. The cell bodies are tucked into these bones. They're not part of the CNS. They're outside of it, but they're being protected by the bones of the vertebrae. And I'm going to talk about that in just a bit when we look more specifically at the anatomy of these dorsal root ganglion cells.